delay. I'm doing maybe triple duty today, doing the camera and the sermon today.
It's not showing you up on the camera. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay, just a little bit of a lag there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, thank you, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to come together to hear your word, to celebrate you, to worship you, praise your name, to learn more about you and about your word, about your ways. Lord, I pray that every heart, every mind that is watching right now, that they would all be open to hear what you have to say. That you would open eyes, that you would open ears, you would open hearts to receive from you today. Pray for everyone that is listening right now, everyone that is online, that you would be with them all, that you would help them to understand the great truth that you have for them in this word. In Jesus' name. So I've been studying this for a number of weeks. I've been doing a lot of preparation, and as it goes, you seem to find a lot in like the very last day, right before you come in. So a few things that I saw yesterday in my adventures. Had the opportunity to ride my bike for a while. I was going to go maybe out for 2 hours and back for 2 hours, so about a 4-hour trip overall. So 6 hours later when I got home, because you have a way of getting lost out there, especially when you're going someplace you've never been before, and especially on a bicycle. They don't really make that many ways for a bicycle to get out of a thing as much as they do for a bicycle to get into a thing. So we'll come up with I'll bring up some more stuff that I saw while I was out there as we go. So we are studying the life of Samson. There's a lot of great lessons that we can learn from the life of Samson, who is basically the last of the judges of the book of Judges. I think that you'll find that every life is sort of a mixed bag of positive examples, things we should do exactly like they did, and a lot of negative examples, things that we should never do like they did. And I think we will find that Samson is mostly one and not mostly the other. Very little of the other. But there's some. So a lot of scripture today, just going to prepare you ahead of time. There's going to be some scripture today, but we'll try not to read too much. So we start in Judges chapter 13, verse 1. Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. So there are 20 judges in the book of Judges, and Samson is the 20th. So it started with Joshua, who's not counted among the judges, but is the previous book here. And he set up the nation of Israel. He divided the land by lot. He gave everybody the territory that they're supposed to have. He conquered most of the Canaanites. And he said, okay, everybody, go off to your own land, conquer the rest of them, get rid of all of them, drive all of them off the land. They never did. And so a significant amount of the problems that we see going forward are because they never did this. And because they fell for the kind of stuff that the Canaanites were doing, they fell into worshiping their idols and worshiping their gods and doing things exactly like they did. And they forget God, they forget Joshua, they forget his good example, and they turn to sinning, and they turn to being just like the Canaanites they were supposed to drive out. And so God delivers them into the hand of the people they seem to like so much better than him. And then they don't like being ruled by these people. They say, help us, help us, help us. And the Lord helps them, and he brings them a judge to deliver them. And the judge delivers them, and then they are godly, wonderful people who love and worship the Lord for a while, and then they forget about him again, and then they go back to their idolatry, and then they go back to being just like the Canaanites, and then Canaanites take over. They say, help, 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 Lord. This happened 19 times in a row. And so you can imagine 19 times in a row, God's a little fed up with them, and I think that's when God says, okay, you're not learning. Okay, here's Samson. Let's see if we learn from Samson right here. Now there was a certain man from Zorah, this is verse 2, of the family of the Danites. So he's a tribe of Dan. There's a story about Dan that comes right after Samson that kind of tells you what Dan was like. Dan tried to wipe out the Canaanites in their own territory, and they got routed so badly they had to abandon their own territory and were looking for someplace else to live. Like, they didn't even keep the land God gave them. They just find someplace else to live, and there's idolatry, and there's stories. So we see Dan is not really the best place to be getting a leader from to begin with right here. And his wife was barren and had no children. And an angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, "Indeed, now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink," in some translation, fermented drink, "and not eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines." Now there's a lot to unpack here, but let's just start. This looks an awful lot like the beginning chapters of Luke, where an angel's coming to tell Mary that she's going to conceive and bear a son, and come with instructions for a son. Now this is the first lesson that we really want to learn from the life of Samson. And that's really, really big, really, really important. Answered prayers often come with responsibilities. How many times in the Bible do you see answered prayers come with instructions? It's usually not just for you. It's very rarely just for you. They wanted a son, and the Lord said, "I will give you a son, and he's going to be for my purposes. Not just so that you can have a son. I'm going to do more through that." But it comes with instructions. It comes with responsibilities. Now, Samson's parents seem to hear this and seem to understand really, really well. Her husband wants to see the angel of God, to see the man of God again, so that he can ask and be absolutely sure that they know everything that they're supposed to do for this child. And another thing here is that he is a Nazarite. So they were very familiar with what Nazarites were, but we might not be that familiar. So we're going to go back to Numbers chapter 6. And this starts in verse 1 of Numbers 6. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when either a man or woman consecrates an offering to take a vow of a Nazarite, to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and similar drinks, fermented drinks, so no alcohol. He shall drink neither vinegar made from wine, nor vinegar made from similar drinks." So they can't even have malt liquor, or malt vinegar, because that's from beer. "Neither shall he drink any grape juice, nor eat fresh grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, from the seed to the skin. All the days of the vow of his separation no razor shall come upon his head, until the days are fulfilled." Verse 6, "All the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. He shall not make himself unclean, even for his father or his mother, for his brother or his sister, when they died, because of his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation he shall be holy to the Lord." It says here, "If anyone dies very suddenly beside him, and he defiles his consecrated head, then he shall shave his head on the day of his cleansing. On the 7th day he shall shave it. Then on the 8th he'll bring a sacrifice, because he sinned in regard to a corpse, and he shall sanctify his head that same day. He shall consecrate to the Lord the days of his separation, but the former days shall be lost, because his separation was defiled." Basically, a Nazarite vow was for a year. If you touched a body on accident and you became unclean, you had to shave your head and you had to start over with new hair and grow out new hair for an entire year in order to keep your vow. So you had to take a full mulligan. And I think we'll find that this winds up appearing in the story later on. So he cannot cut his hair. He cannot have anything to do with grapes. He cannot have anything to do with alcohol. And he cannot touch anything that's dead. It's 4 things that he can't do. And since he's a Nazirite from birth, he doesn't get just 1 year. He can never do any of these things his entire life. There's 4 of them. So we'll go there. All right. There's more story about the angel and Samson's father. We'll skip just a little bit ahead so we can get done this morning. Now Samson went down to Timnah, and Timnah is, I believe that's a city of the Philistines. So he's hanging out in Philistine territory and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me as a wife. This is Judges chapter 14, verse 1 and 2. And we'll start up in 3. So then his father and mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren or among all my people that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? So his parents seem to understand pretty well, like, what are you doing going to the enemy, trying to look for a wife? Now this is pretty late in Samson's life. Let's move on here. And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. If you look in the notes of the commentary in this version of the Bible, she pleases me well is literally, she is right in my eyes. And that's kind of foreboding if you're a little familiar with the book of Judges. We're going to skip ahead to the last verse of Judges. This is 21:25. This is right after a really, really, really graphic, really, really horrible story of all the debauchery that's been going on in Israel. Basically, Cliff Notes version, there's a town in Benjamin that show themselves to be worse than Sodom. And some really, really, really horrible, horrible graphic stuff that leads to a civil war where they about annihilate the entire tribe of Benjamin, because the tribe of Benjamin, for whatever reason, decides to defend these people instead of letting them get turned into a smoldering hole in the ground like they should. And so they nearly wipe out the entire tribe of Benjamin and then come up with some cockamamie scheme for how they're not going to wipe out Benjamin, with all this weird, weird stuff going on that doesn't make any sense at all. And then we get to this last verse. Verse 25, chapter 21. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So, Samson saying, she's right in my eyes. That's kind of ominous sounding, isn't it? And just for notes so we understand, what became of not just wiping out Benjamin? Well, the first king, Saul, if you familiar with Saul's illustrious career, Saul was a Benjamite. And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. And we're back in Judges 14:4. But his father and mother did not know it was of the Lord that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So here's Samson. He's grown. He's super strong. He has a super strength. He's got his Nazirite vow going. He's never cut his hair. He's 7 long braids of hair on his head. He's an adult. We don't know what he does for a living, if he does anything with his super strength for a living. And he doesn't seem to have much authority. He's just like his parents, give me this woman. He's chilling with the enemy, trying to go to the enemy camp to meet women. So the Lord had to do this to get him to move. He wasn't just like, I'm super strong, I'm capable, I'm going to fight, I'm going to get rid of these Philistines. He's just chilling. I like to think of, like, imagine Superman not even being Superman, but just like, being a cashier at Costco or something, just chilling in front of the TV. But you're bulletproof. You're super strong. I mean, you leap tall buildings in a single bound. Why aren't you doing anything? Storage Wars. Come on. No, why aren't you doing something? I mean, I gave you super strength. I gave you these big, strong arms. Do anything with them? Fight anyone? No, I'm good. Well, if a woman's the only thing that's going to convince you to move, I guess I'll find a woman to convince you to move. Second lesson, if you're not going to be motivated by obedience, God is going to find something to cause his purposes to come to pass. If it's not going to be you doing it out of love or out of justice or out of what the Lord wants, if he decides that you're going to do it, he'll find some other way to get you to do it. All right. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Remember the 4 things he can't do? Vineyard is a very, very weird place for him to be, considering he's a Nazirite. Now, to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart. Lion come out, dead lion. He went down and talked with the woman, and as she pleased Samson well. After some time, when he returned to get her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. And he took some and he ate it. Now, what are the 4 things he can't do? He can't have anything to do with grapes. He can't drink. He can't touch it. He can't touch a dead body. And he's going eating something out of a dead body. Who would even want to? I mean, yum, rotting lion carcass flavored honey. I mean, who would even want to do that? And then he broke a commandment for his parents because his mom had been told, do not eat anything unclean. And so what does he do? He feeds them the same honey. When I was studying this, I followed Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews. Josephus was born just a few years after Jesus was crucified, or right around the time that Jesus was crucified. He was involved in the Jewish war that led to the destruction of the temple. So he's like a contemporary historian that did the whole history of the Jewish people up to the Jewish war. And a lot of it is a retelling of the Old Testament with some extraneous details, probably got from other sources we don't have anymore. He said that Samson also fed some of that honey to his wife. So it's really interesting to get these new perspectives, these new things. So I might mention Josephus another couple of times in this. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there for young men used to do. And it happened when they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Now, if we think about it, this is an Israelite, and this is a super, super strong Israelite, and this is like maybe the judge of the Israelites. So those 30 companions to be with him were probably 30 companions to watch him. Samson said to them, let me pose a riddle. If you can solve it within 7 days of the feast, I'll give you 30 garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you can't explain it to me, you give me 30 garments and 30 changes of clothing. And they were like, pose your riddle. The thing to understand about this is clothing was hideously expensive back then. You usually had 1 set of clothes, maybe 2. And people could see you from miles and miles off because they could see your clothes. Like when we have characters in a costume and you can tell by what they're wearing who they are, this is like from a bygone time where you really didn't change your clothes so much. Sometimes they took baths in their clothes and washed themselves and their clothes at the same time. But you could see who somebody was, even though everybody was gray-haired with gray beard, long beards. You could tell who they were from like half a mile away because of their clothes. Clothes were very, very important, and so they were very, very expensive in this time. So this is a huge wager. And he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. So he's making a riddle about a thing only he knows about, something that's never happened before. And so they understandably get mad. And they eventually get his wife to get the story out of him. And he said to her, look, I've not explained it to my father or mother, so should I explain it to you? Now she wept on him in 7 days while the feast lasted. And it happened on the seventh day that he told her because she pressed him so much. And so this is a literary device that the Lord is very, very, very fond of using called foreshadowing. And they said, what is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion, after he told his wife. And he said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. So he's, one, insulting his wife, and he's, two, admitting that he was cheating. They couldn't have possibly guessed it if he hadn't been told. And the Spirit of the Lord came down on him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon, which is another Philistine city, and killed 30 of their men, and took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who explained the riddle. So he's actually beating up people and stealing their clothes to pay his debt. 30 of them. So later on, after a while came the wheat harvest. And he goes down and he finds out that the father of his bride-to-be gave her to one of his companions because he stormed off in a fit. And he got really, 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 really mad. Understandably, his wife's been given over to another, although I wonder, what was he doing? How long did he wait? Like if you're married to a woman, you're just going to go off someplace for like a month or until the wheat harvest begins? I don't know about you, but when I got married, we went straight home. And Samson said to them, this time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them. He got really, really angry for what the Philistines had done to him. And so what does he do? Does he get 300 dudes to come? Nope. 300 foxes. Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, put a torch between a pair of tails. And when he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Now, this area is so full of foxes. I see more foxes in this region all the time. While I was preparing for the sermon, I was walking one of the trails in Reston. I actually saw 2 foxes at the same time. I mean, there's just foxes all over the place. Wow, yeah. And yet, even here, have you ever seen 300 foxes? Did you even know there were 300 foxes? How long did that take? Has he got cages? Is he feeding foxes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Was trying to get fox 200, 201? Like, how do you even find 300 foxes? What is this? Like, this is such... I mean, it's just so fraught with problems. What are you doing, Samson? Like, what if they go the wrong way while they're running away from the tail, their tail being on fire? What do you... Is there anything more likely to fail, or anything that's just like more pointless cruelty to animals than just... Why didn't you get 300 dudes? Why didn't you get 300 people giving them torches? They can stop people who try to stop them. They know what they're supposed to be burning. I mean, he's just being just so silly about all this. And then the Philistine says, "Who has done this?" And they answered, "Samson, because he has taken the wife and given her to his companion." So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. This is what they threatened to do if she didn't get the riddle out of them. And then they really did it to her. And so they took out his wife and his father-in-law as vengeance. Now the Philistines went up and camped in Judah and deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" And so they answered, "We have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us." Then 3,000 men. Now he didn't even bother to get 300 dudes to fight against the Philistines. 3,000 people of Judah came up to fight him. 3,000 people, his own people, are trying to stop him. Went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom and said to Samson, "Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this you have done to us?" And he said to them, "As they did to me, so I've done to them." He's like, "What? I'm just getting revenge." Not like, "Let's take them out." He's saying, "Well, what? They burned my wife. I don't know." And the Judahites, 3,000 of them, are like, "Hey, what are you doing to our overlords? They're not bad people. Can't you just leave us in subjugation and peace?" Just such a giving up. Just such just an abandoning, like even trying to be free. But, with Samson at the helm, do you really want to take your chances against the Philistines? So lesson 3, people inevitably turn on or abandon leaders who don't take responsibility. Samson should have had authority. He should have had a right to rule. He should have been able to convince people that following him was a good thing. Especially with him in the front of the line. He's like, "If you just get scared and hide behind me, I'll take out all the Philistines. Y'all can just take out anybody I miss. Let's go." You remember that scene from Avengers? Captain America's like, "We need to make a perimeter, do this, do this, do this." And the guy's like, "Who are you? Why should I take orders from you?" He smacks, beats up one of the aliens that are coming. He's like, "Hey, we need to make a perimeter." That's authority. That is having the power, having the wisdom, having the understanding, having the mantle put on you, which is a mantle that God did put on him. It says, you want to follow me because following me is a wise decision. It will go well for you if you follow me. And not what the Philistines had, which is tyranny. Do what I say or else. Now, it'll be good for you if you listen to me, but it'll be bad for you if you don't. So, Samson, he didn't have authority. He didn't operate in the authority he was given. He's just kind of lazy. Whenever he does anything against the Philistines, it's right. It's just not enough. But they said to him, "We have come to arrest you, that we may deliver you from into the hand of the Philistines." And Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you'll not kill me yourselves." And they said, "Okay." And they tied him up with ropes, and they brought him to the Philistines. And he's all tied up, and he looks helpless, but of course it's Samson. He snaps the ropes. They just go flying in every direction. He reaches down, grabs the jawbone of a donkey, and he smacks, beats up, slaughters 1,000 of them, and then routs the rest. Now, no Jew would ever make this story up because this is the donkey of a jawbone. This is an animal carcass. Remember the 4 things he can't do? This is the 3rd thing. Again, he's defiled himself with another corpse. And then what does he do? He makes a clever little pun about it. With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. In the Hebrew, heaps is a pun of donkey. They're the same letters. It's basically the same word. So we want to translate it to English. It'd be something like, with the donkey's jawbone, I kicked their asses. Just a fun pun that he has. Just completely ignoring the fact that he's defiled himself with a corpse again. And that riddle that he gave. Do we think the drinking might have been involved in that? I have a feeling that there was like drinking involved if we're going to be like gambling all the fortune that is 30 suits of clothing. It even says in the notes here that the word for banquet comes from the word to drink. So yeah, he was probably hosting an imbibe or something like that. He was hosting a drinking party. So he's broken 3 of the 4. He's had plenty to do with grapes. He's had plenty to do with alcohol. He's defiled himself with a corpse now twice and made light of it. The only thing he has left is his hair. And now we come to Samson and Delilah. Now Samson went to Gaza and saw a harlot there, so he's not even thinking about marriage anymore, and went to her. And the Gazites were told, Samson's come here. So they surrounded the place, they lay in wait for him, and they're going to catch him in the morning when he tries to leave the town. So at midnight he goes to the doors of the gate. City gate is barred, so he just picks it up, lifts the entire gate up out of the ground, and carries the whole gate, bar and posts and all, just carries it like 25 miles and sets it down. There's a passage in the book of Genesis, it was either Rebecca or Rachel, the women blessed her children and said, may your children possess the gates of your enemy. Now that is how you possess the gates of your enemy. Just pick it up, set it down in your own yard. So, after he's just escaped death, this time also, afterward it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah, a Philistine also. Samson. These Philistine women have been nothing but problems for you so far. It ain't turned out well yet. You're going to try to see if it'll turn out well this time. Okay. The Lord of the Philistines came to her and said to her, entice him, find out where his strength lies. We'll give you 1,100 pieces of silver each. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and what you may be bound, with what you may be bound to afflict you. And Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. And so she immediately does it. Now, fresh bowstrings are animal guts, and if they haven't been dried, then they're coming directly from an animal. So he's defiling himself with another corpse. Come on, Samson. And she bound him with them. Now men were lying awake, staying with her in the room, and she said to him, the Philistines are upon you. But he broke the bowstrings. And Delilah said to Samson, look, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me what you may be bound with. So he said to her, if they bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. Now this is what had already happened to him when he found the donkey's jawbone. But that didn't work either. And so why is Samson coming up with all this stuff? Because he hasn't completely lost his mind yet. He's wise enough not to trust Delilah. But she asks him a third time, if you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of a loom. Uh-oh, Samson, you're starting to talk about your hair. You're not saying everything about your hair, but you're starting to mention your hair and like all these tricks about how you might be bound. That didn't work either. How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me all these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength lies. And it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him So his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart, and said to her, No razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. So now he's not only told her, but told her why. He told her how it all works. He got it twisted. He got it really twisted. He started thinking, my hair is my strength. My hair is my refuge. My hair is my help in trouble. Don't forget where your blessing comes from. It's not the hair. It's not the hair. I really think the Lord eventually saw what he was doing, saw what he thought in his heart, and he said, oh, so it's your hair that's going to save you. Oh, it's your hair where your strength comes from, not the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, not the Holy One of Israel, not I shall never leave you or forsake you. Your hair? All right, let's do it your way. Let it be your hair that is your strength, and your hair can be taken from you. They shaved him bald, took him away, plucked out his eyes. It occurred to me just yesterday. Philistines did a very, very, very foolish thing. Yes, they shaved his hair. They took away his strength. Then they plucked out his eyes. They took away his greatest weakness. He didn't never hear the Lord before, because he can't hear the Lord over the sound of how hot this woman is, or the sound of how hot that woman is. He's just constantly ignoring. He's lust of the eyes. The New Testament talks about the lust of the eyes. That's what got him. So removing his eyes was like the silliest thing they could have done. The Philistines took him and put out his eyes. This is Judges 16, verse 21. Then they bound him with bronze fetters. He became a grinder in the prison. Now we know what he does for a living. He grinds grain. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaven. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god and to rejoice. Dagon comes into play later. One of the sources of Josephus says that Dagon took the form of a human being from the navel up, and took the form of a fish from the navel down. So this is a giant merman. That's what they think Dagon is. Dagon comes into the story later, after the book of Judges, when Eli is the high priest. The Ark of the Covenant is captured and brought to the temple of Dagon. And the next morning they see Dagon falling over like he's bowing down before the Ark of the Covenant. And they prop him back up. And the next day they see him bow down again, but with his head broken off and skittered across the floor to the threshold. So this is where we see Dagon again, later on in the story. And they said, our God has delivered into our hands Samson, our enemy. I don't think the Lord really would stand for that kind of talk very long. When the people saw him, they praised their God. So it happened when their hearts were merry that they said, call for Samson that he may perform for us. Let's just take a moment to think about what might be going through Samson's head at this time. What might he be thinking while he's sitting there, blind, in his cell, grinding grain, in the power of the Philistines, weak as any man, which he's probably never experienced in his life. I think he was strong all the time. Why was I so dumb? Why was I so foolish? Why didn't I actually do what you wanted with this strength? Why didn't I use this strength for anyone but me? I mean, that's got to be absolute rock bottom for him. I've been rock bottom myself. Let me tell you, more people get lost there. More people get found there. Rock bottom, that can be the greatest place your whole life if you let it. Because when you're happy, when you're hunky-dory, when everything's going good, when you've got it yourself, you might think you don't need God. And if God has to do it this way, he does it this way to show you that you need him. Just fallen nature, I guess we decide, I'll put my trust in about anything before I put my trust in him. He costs too much. So the Lord takes away absolutely every single thing you can put your trust in that's not him, so that you have to put your trust in him. The difference is, do you see what he's doing? Do you see where he really is? Do you really see that you need him to get you out of this? Or are you just mad and angry and hurt that you're in this situation to begin with? So many people get lost. So many people get found at rock bottom. Samson got found at rock bottom. He started listening to the Lord. He just realized what a fool he had been. Then Samson said to the lad who held him by the hand, he had a little boy helping him along because he was blind. He hadn't been blind for long. Let me feel the pillars which support the temple so I can lean on them. Now the temple was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, about 3,000 men and women on the roof, watching while Samson performed. Then Samson called to the Lord. Now this is something we haven't seen in his story yet. He called to the Lord, saying, O Lord, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once, O God, that I may with one blow take vengeance on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Now, this is still all about him. Not let me do what I was supposed to do the whole time, but let me get revenge. So it's still kind of about him. But even so, the Lord is gracious. The Lord is merciful. The Lord can forget all that mistakes. And he does. He gives him his strength again. He pushed with all his might, and the temple fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than he had killed in his life. He wiped out the whole temple. 3,000 Philistines, like maybe the upper echelon of Philistine society, all gone. The one blow. But he had to die to do it. And this is a sober lesson for us. Stay out of the world. Stay out of the things of the world. Don't go near it. If he had toppled that temple from the outside, he wouldn't have been crushed by it. But he was inside. He was in it right next to Dagon when he toppled the temple. If he had done what he was supposed to do, he wouldn't have had to suffer as much as he suffered. He was still used mightily. He was still used greatly. But he had to go through an awful lot that he didn't have to go through because of his decisions. Now I look at this last verse. This is Judges 16:30. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than he had killed in his life. Verse 31. And his brothers and all his father's house came down and took him and brought him and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of his father Manoah. He had judged Israel 20 years. So in 20 years, he hadn't managed to kill 3,000 Philistines. And he killed 3,000 Philistines when he broke the pillars. And I thought, wow, that is like such a testament to what a giant waste of space that he was as a judge. And it was really studying this that I came to understand it differently. That this is really a message of amazing encouragement for all of us. This is what I really want to get. You forget everything else I said. This, I think, is the most important lesson that we can get from Samson. He smashed the pillars, the whole thing fell down. He killed more people in the last 20 seconds of his life than he had done in the last 20 years. He had done more to fill the purpose for which he was created. It was prophesied. Let's go back to the prophecy. This is 13 verse 3. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, indeed now you are barren. You shall conceive and bear a son. Verse 4. Verse 5. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. The child shall be a Nazarite from the womb. And he shall begin to deliver Israel. Begin to deliver. All the other judges, they got to deliver. Samson gets to begin to deliver. Like he's being prophesied is going to be kind of an idiot. But he's going to start. He's going to begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. This comes to pass. The Lord uses him mightily to do what he's been called to do, even in just the last 20 seconds. So I say to anybody listening to me, look to your left, look to your right. I'm doing it backwards. Look to your left, look to your right. Do you see souls on fire, burning in agony? Do you see a lake of fire? Are you in a lake of fire right now? If you're not in hell yet, he's not done with you. Even if you are room temperature, he might not be done with you yet. We'll go to one more verse, just one more verse. This is 2 Kings. Verse 21. This is right after Elisha died. We'll go ahead and read 2 Kings 13, verse 20 and 21. Then Elisha died, and they buried him. And raiding bands from Moab invaded the land in the spring of the year. So it was, as they were burying a man, that suddenly they spied a band of raiders, and they put the man in the tomb of Elisha. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood on his feet. It doesn't even matter if you are lukewarm. It doesn't even matter if you are a skeleton. If you are a skeleton sold out for Jesus, it's not too late for you. You could be nothing but bones left, and God can still use you to do whatever he wants, even raise the dead. If you look to your right and you look to your left and you see clouds and angels with harps and stuff, gold pavement on the ground, he is more not done with you than anyone. If you're on the earth, you still have a chance to do what he wants. He can do more with the last 20 seconds than he did with the last 20 years. It's never too late. Never too late to learn. Get your mind right. Get your heart right. Amen. Start doing what he wants you to do. Do what he created you to do. And if he's got to take you to rock bottom, he'll take you to rock bottom. And if you're in rock bottom, learn what you got to learn. And he'll let you out. Let it do what it was created to do. Do what you were created to do. Josephus said, yeah, Samson had a problem with women. This is a real serious problem with women. I know there's lots of people in the world right now with some really bad problems with women. I get sick of how many problems with women there are. I mean, can't you come up with anything else to be undone by? Ravi Zacharias, Jerry Falwell Jr., Jared from Subway. Jared from Subway? Really? Even you, Tiger Woods, Bill Cosby. I mean, just like, come up with something else, please. Problems with women. And we got to learn to not do that anymore. But aside from that, Josephus says, Samson was a great man. He did a lot of great things. He really did. He fulfilled his purpose. through a lot more heartache and suffering than he needed to, but he filled his purpose. And no matter what we messed up, if we had problems with women or any other kind of problems, if we went off in shenanigans, not listening to God for 20 years, no authority whatsoever, we can turn it around. And maybe we can figure it out, turn it around before we wind up in prison, before we wind up rock bottom. So Lord, I pray that you help us. Help us mend our ways before you have to go in and mend them for us. Lord, humble us so that we don't have to be humbled. Help us humble ourselves so that we don't have you humbling us. Because if God has to humble you, you're not going to like it as much as if you did it yourself. You can redeem the time, Lord. You can give us more in the last 20 seconds than we had in the last 20 years. Just think if you give God all the time you have left, and it's 20 more years. If he could do that with 20 seconds, what can he do with 20 years of you being sold out? So I just pray that we all do that for which we were made. And receive the great, great blessing, greatest blessing of all, which is fulfilling our purpose, Lord. You would help each of us to do it. In your name and for your glory. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Good word.